All right, welcome back to Cactus Talk. It's been a while since we did this. Of course, I am Zach. Obviously, that makes that fella Noah. We have some stuff to talk about, my friend.
Yeah, we do. A lot of fun things to talk about.
Remember when it wasn't fun to be an Arizona sports fan, or when it was like a joke?
Yeah, those were days that I don't want to talk about.
Yeah, we won't talk
But
about
things
those.
are looking up for sure.
Very looking up. So I guess we'll just kind of dive right into it. How about those Diamondbacks?
Yeah, they turned it around at just the right time. They were struggling early on, and a lot of fingers were pointed towards the health of the team. But now our rotation is back, fully healthy. Yeah, we have a couple of key starters out on the IL, but we have some role players coming in and stepping up and doing some nice things in their place. So uh, it's clicking at just the right time in the stretch run.
Yeah, for sure. And that's like I said offline. The great teams always find ways to win. I feel like this Diamondbacks team, since they've been hot, actually all year now that we think about it, they win in the most random of ways. Like last night, they had scored the two. I believe it was the two go-ahead runs off of wild pitches, consecutive wild pitches. Today, they just couldn't stop scoring runs. They scored. Jock Peterson had a little league home run off of an error, which was odd. It was like two errors in one play. But yeah, they're finding ways to win. They're getting hot at the right time, like you said, and starting to get key pieces back. Those said key pieces are performing, thankfully. So I guess what would you what would you say is going to be the biggest key factor in us going to the World Series again, even winning it? Like if you had to point it to one thing, what would you say it's going to be?
I mean, if we're going based off of what we've seen this year, I just think the key point is just staying healthy, right? Because when our rotation is healthy, we have the best rotation on paper in the major leagues, not just the National League. But the thing is, like, if we actually look at most recent stats, like we've actually been doing it with our bats, which is crazy. Like
Yeah,
we were looked at a team that was like focusing on a lot more heavily on like fundamentals and pitching and defense, but like we're getting it done like offensively. So that's really scary to me, like in a good way. But I just think like if we start with the how the season started, a lot of our starters were out, and we were struggling. I mean, we were keeping the ship afloat barely. We were sitting around 500, and then when we started getting players back, it just turned around. So I think that's the key.
yeah, for sure. And we're seeing now exactly what's happening now that we've got a fully healthy roster, or just about a fully healthy roster. And that's the other thing too, is that it's baseball's next man up mentality. Gabby went down. We're starting to see the rise of Adrian Del Castillo. The pitchers, we've had we've had Montgomery be not exactly who we thought he would be. Like we discussed, we think it's because of no spring training. Hopefully, that's what it is. Hopefully, they decide to bring him back next year, give him another shot. But yeah, the pitcher injuries, we had Merrill Kelly and we had Erod both injured. And then next guy came up, seeing the continued evolution of Brandon Fott. Ryan Nelson's keeping his postseason form, thankfully. And just, yeah, the bats are clicking. We're seeing Jake McCarthy be a complete godsend for us, getting hot at the right time. He had an okay year so far and then just caught fire. He's got 11 hits in his last 5 games. I feel like every time he's up to bat, he's on base. That's legitimately how it seems. Whether it's the bat, whether it's walking. We're also seeing Corbin Carroll start to come back to his form. He's got a few base hits in the last couple of games. He's getting his power back too, which I feel like that's going to be one of the biggest keys going deep in the postseason. Is our stars playing to their capabilities? Of course, we have Marte, who, if he's not MVP, we're going to riot. I feel like every argument you could make against him being MVP at this point is just invalid. Let's be honest, it's down to him and Shohei. And Shohei, while he's had an outstanding season offensively, I do think that something needs to be said for the MVP being a top defensive standout, and Marte leads in every defensive category as a second baseman. Um, yeah, What are your thoughts on that whole? It feels like everyone's evolving at the same time. What are your thoughts on the whole Corbin Carroll coming back, Jake McCarthy catching fire, Marte season?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to start with my thoughts on Jake McCarthy. So even before last year, when he had a really bad season, the year before he was doing really well, and now he's come back in this season and really performed well. So very excited for him. I always knew he had that kind of talent to turn it around at just the right moment, and this is definitely a redemption season for him. But realistically, it started off with Suarez in July. We were very excited when we originally added him, and he was doing fine defensively, but the offense just wasn't there.
Mhm.
It was very poor, but July really turned it around for him, and we see him continuing to make positive strides here in August. So that's who it really started with, and then Carroll. Yeah, he's starting to string it together slowly but surely. Like he'll get like maybe he'll go 1 for 4. He'll go, maybe have a couple hits here and there. But at the end of the day, like you can't get it all back in like the course of a week. I mean, it's got to be slow steps, and we're starting to see more from him. Yeah, as long as we get Carroll going, I think that's definitely going to be important for a postseason run because we saw the year that he had last year, and he's one of the most exciting young players in the league. So,
Oh yeah,
yeah, the offensive bats turning it around at just the right time has definitely been a huge portion, especially considering our starters have been out. Like you said, Kelly missing a good chunk of time. Eduardo Rodriguez recently coming back. Missed the entire season up until this point. And then even Gallen has missed some time. And the way that we're making up for it is we're just getting it done offensively with our bats, just getting key hits at just the right time, just playing our brand of baseball, which is just fundamentals. So everything is clicking.
playing those fundamentals. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing, I mean, because you got to take the good with the bad, right? The one thing right now that I think might be a bit of an issue or a bit of a kind of like, I don't want to say downfall, but our pitching's kind of worrying me. Not so much, not so much the health. We're starting, like we're discussing, we're getting those key pieces back. We're seeing Gallen kind of have an off season. Montgomery, as we discussed, is not it's not himself. You got to go through those preseason routines, those spring training routines to get yourself right, to try some new pitches, try some new stuff because, with every year the league figures you out a little bit more, right? So the bullpen we did make some upgrades, which I'm really happy for. We got AJ Puck, which I think was an outstanding trade, or acquisition rather. We got Dylan Floro, which was just funny to me, just running to the very next locker room. He's been okay, but we're with all these injuries that we keep running into. It's just we're gonna need all hands on deck, like we discussed offline. So the more the merrier. We've got arms. It's just kind of worries me a little bit how we haven't been seeing. We've been seeing okay stuff from our pitching. So hopefully they turn it around as we get
Yeah,
into.
I definitely echo that as well because like you would think like I said on paper we have the best starting five in baseball, but at
Absolutely.
the end of the day we've seen struggles from Gallen here as of late, um, and then also just Montgomery just having a really weird season. Like you said, it's really important to have that spring training. We discussed this that like hitters start to figure you out. So in spring training, it's about tweaking those mechanics, figuring out some new pitches to throw out there, and new ways to throw your pitches, so that way you can throw hitters off. So not having that spring training definitely seems being be really impactful. And then on top of the bullpen, like you mentioned, Seawald struggles have really been a huge impact because it is really important if you want to be a successful team to have a definitive closer that you can rely on and trust consistently. And
Absolutely.
Seawall just has not been there. So, I mean, ever since we moved him back to some earlier innings, looks like he's been pitching like more so the eighth inning, potentially the seventh as well. He's
Mhm.
been doing really well so far. So it seems like he's starting to hit his stride a little bit more. Closer by committee is not going to work. So by the time we reach October, and once we get there, we need to have a definitive closer, whether it's Paul Sewald, whether it's Justin Martinez, who's been doing well, whether it's AJ Pook, so we'll have to see how that goes. But it needs to be defined. We can't have that closer by committee.
Right, and I feel like that's a big reason as to why we went as deep as we went in the postseason last year. Right,
Yep.
we had we had those defined roles. Ginkle had his role, Thompson had his role, and then you had Seawald coming in to close the door. I agree, closer by committee is just not going to work. Teams are going to catch on to it. They're going to sub out guys. They're going to see the patterns. It's not going to work. Seawald, though, to your point, has been doing a lot better since he's been taken out of the role. He has pitched 5 innings and he's given up 2 hits with no runs. So I think he's good where he is as like a utility guy. He's definitely, if he's going to be in the mix for that closer's role again, he's absolutely going to have to prove himself a little bit more, in my opinion. Just because when it was bad, it was really bad. But thankfully, we are 3 games out of the division, which at the start of the season, seeing the Dodgers get Shohei, seeing them get Yamamoto, like I, in a million years, did not think the division race would be this close. And we've also got that other California team who somehow just keeps winning. No idea how, but yeah.
The bullpen additions they made at the trade deadline are really carrying them.
They really, really are, which it's insane. Their bullpen now, you can have a starter go out in the 5th and you're done. So, yeah, we've got a good hold on the wild card. I believe we're at 4 games, I want to say. Let's see here. 4.5
here. So for the wild card, yeah, we are. Well, it says we have the same record as the Padres, but
Mm-hmm.
we are currently ahead in the standings. Maybe there's some kind of there's some kind of tiebreaker there. So as things stand right now, if the season were to end today, we would get that first wild card spot over San Diego.
Right. Which, I mean, it's so crucial because the NL has been insane this season. Absolutely insane. Like obviously you have your division leaders right now, but there's not a team to me that's running away with it at all. And of course, as we obviously know, once you get to the postseason, the whole season restarts. So it's going to be a fun last month of the regular season, last month and a half.
The wild card race is really heating up. There's going to be a lot of things to talk about on that in the National League.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to have to keep this consistent. It's going to get crazy. I think the Diamondbacks, if I'm not mistaken, I just glanced at their schedule earlier today. Thankfully, it's easing up a little bit. Obviously, you don't want to count any team out in baseball. Everybody's hungry. We've got Tampa Bay coming up. Then we've got 3 in Miami. We've got 3 at Fenway. And then we come home for a series against the Mets. And then the most important series of the season, in my opinion, against the Dodgers. So
that can be very important just because of how close we are to winning, to being in the lead for the division. But you could also potentially circle that final series against the Padres between the 27th and 29th as the biggest series, depending on where we're at for the wild card. Or if we, depending on where the division is, there's a lot of things that go into it. We're in contention for the division lead. The Padres are. So the NL West is extremely competitive right now. So both those series are very important.
Super, super important. It's wild to me to think that if we keep playing the same brand of baseball, we keep playing Diamondback baseball, we could very well be in the lead in the division after this Dodger series. It's going to be insane. So we know what my Labor Day plans are. I'll be watching some Dodger baseball. But, yeah, it's going to be fun. I hope we can keep it together. Every hot team eventually cools off. So, but my fingers are crossed. I have faith. Let's talk some hoops. Phoenix Suns. That is where Noah shines. So
I'll just kind of start things off just how try to TLDR how the off season's gone. Mike Budenholzer, very exciting hire. We've discussed that.
Super excited.
Definitely a lot more exciting than Frank Vogel was because I think he was a legitimate championship coach versus like we saw Lakers having that questionable championship during the COVID year. But again, he has a really good history and a really good track record. So I'm very excited and especially he's an offensive head coach. So with the personnel that we have, I think he's going to work really well with them. And then just our other additions this season, I think we did a really good job at being patient, letting the market kind of run its course, and then just picking like the best players that we could get, like Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee, and then surprisingly, to everyone's surprise, Tyus Jones. Like
Still shocked.
how did we? I don't know how we got that
For
dude.
pennies on the dollar, no less. It would have been shocking enough that we got him for just in general. But the fact that I'm walking into a Sam's Club and you're blowing up my phone saying, "We got Tyus Jones, we got Tyus Jones," it's
Yeah,
insane on the vet
yeah.
minimum.
And realistically, I mean, everything that I saw on how we were able to recruit him is we just sold him on culture. We sold him on Arizona, Phoenix being a great place to live, great place for his family. So, and the fact that he's going to have a starting point guard role on a team that is seriously contending for a championship. So I think that's just where like he's like, all right, I'm sold, and then we'll see where it goes next year. But and then even our draft picks have some potential as well. So we're talking like Ryan Dunn, also Iguodaro. I definitely saw some really positive things from them in summer league. Yes, it is summer league, so take that with a grain of salt. But we saw what they had the potential to bring to the table. Right, Ryan Dunn being a really good defensive force. Just needs to work on his offensive skills a little bit, and then also being able to. He's a really good distributor as well. I saw like a lot of his stats and box scores from the summer league, and his assist numbers were doing pretty well. His turnover numbers were a little bit high, something he needs to work on for sure. But again, they are rookies, so I'm
Right.
sure they'll turn it around and figure out, fix their flaws and work things out. But they do have strong potential to earn rotational minutes this season. And then also, I think like potentially someone we're not really talking about as much as Jalen Bridges. So I thought I saw a lot of good things from him in summer league as well. So I think there's a potential for him later down the road to get some rotational minutes. So a lot of good things, and then also re-signing like Bull, and then because he provided some good things from us when we saw him last year,
Big fan.
um, and then just bringing back Josh Okogie, I think that's more looking like a piece that we could potentially trade at a later time with a salary to get some better pieces in return. So I think that's where that might lead. Re-signing Damian Lee and I just think we actually have some depth this season to really, to be a contending team. So depth is extremely important. You can't just be really top heavy.
Right, and that's what I feel was their biggest problem last season and why they started out the way they did. Nobody really had a defined role. I feel like as far as the starting five, we didn't have that true point guard to distribute. We didn't let our starting three just hoop. That's what they're known for. Book, Katie, obviously Beal. Just got to let the hoopers hoop and fill in the pieces around them. Which I agree with you. I feel like we did an excellent job. I was honestly, to an extent, surprised at all three of those signings we made. Tyus Jones, obviously number one, for the pennies that we got him for. Literally hearing he turned down bigger money elsewhere for a culture just goes to show you how important culture is. And I feel like it doesn't get talked about nearly enough when it comes to the NBA. It's make or break, because when you have guys that put together that special chemistry, we see what happens. We see what happened with the Splash Brothers, for example, in Golden State. They had that culture. We see, speaking of Bud, when he was in Milwaukee, we saw, granted, they won one title, but they were always at the top of the standings in the conference. So culture is huge. Mason Plumlee, massive. I feel like Nurk just got exhausted. We didn't really have much of a backup, if at all, behind him. So Plumlee's going to be huge. He gets a lot of minutes. He's going to get a lot of minutes off the bench. Lot of boards too. And then Monty Morris, which I feel like Monty's going to be a dark horse for us. I feel like not enough people are talking about him being on the Suns. Coming off the bench, he's going to be big for us. And then, of course, you have the returning guys. Like you said, Damian Lee. I'm surprised we re-signed him, honestly. I really thought he was going to go. But, just depth is outstanding. And I'm really excited to see how that's going to go. I can see us easily being top 2, top 3 in the West for sure.
As good as it can be for a team that is as top heavy as it is, and then of course bringing back Royce O'Neal as well, which was a given. We knew that was going to happen no matter
For
what.
sure.
So,
For sure.
but yeah, it's looking pretty solid. And then, like you said, Monte Morris not being talked about as much. The biggest thing that we want to emphasize when it comes to Tyus Jones and Monte Morris is the assist to turnover ratio. They are two of the best point guards in the league when it comes to assist to turnover ratio. And
Mhm.
you have one of them starting and one of them coming off the bench. So that's really going to help because that was a huge issue for us last year was like how many turnovers we committed on a nightly basis. And you
Very
cut down, you look at those numbers and you're like, if we cut down on like several of those per game, like we're easily like probably like a 55 to 60 win team, right? Like,
for sure.
so, yeah.
And that's the great thing about Ish. You know, we were excited when he first was brought in as the owner, governor, whatever you call it. Um, we were excited because he seemed on paper like he was just a fan friendly guy, which I mean is huge after the nightmare that was Robert Sarver. Which I mean, it was cool enough that he did things like brought us KD, and it seemed like he really just kind of listened to what the fans were saying, which to his credit, from what I heard, was kind of a detractor with a lot of NBA analysts out there. But then we're seeing that he legitimately understands ball. Between him and James Jones, you know, they understand the pieces that it takes, especially Jones, to be successful in this league, and they definitely demonstrated that this offseason.
Yeah.
Um, that's just can't help but sit back and think between the Diamondbacks, between the Suns, and we're gonna do an episode soon about the Cardinals. So I feel like that's a whole episode in and of itself. It's just exciting to be an Arizona sports fan. It's a weird feeling after all the dark times we went through with all the teams. Just to know that they're all so competitive now, it's like it's crazy. It's fun to watch. Definitely got a bright future ahead for sure. So
Yeah, and then I think too that we're looking forward to as far as the Sun season. So we just want to look at the Olympics as well and what Devin Booker and Kevin Durant have brought to the table. We know KD has historically been a great Olympics player. So this year in 6 games, he averaged 13.8 points a game, 3.2 rebounds a game, and 2.3 assists in those 6 games, and shot 54% from the field. And then we already know that the records that he's broken. So very, very exciting for him. But the biggest one I want to point out is Devin Booker. Like his
absolutely.
stats are not going to pop off to you. They're really not.
Right.
Like he averaged 11.7 points per game, 2.7 rebounds, and 3.3 assists per game. But the biggest thing that we saw was his versatility and being able to play different roles and do whatever the team asks him to do. Like if a team asks him to be if his team is asking him to be a scorer, he will be a scorer and he'll shoot lights out. If they're wanting him to sit back and just be a distributor, he's more than happy to be a distributor. If they want him to just sit back and like play really good defense, he's played really good defense. So we're really seeing a different version of Devin Booker as far as that is concerned, and he's really like putting a lot of respect on himself. I think a lot of people are opening their eyes to him now. So that's really good and something I'm excited for. But what I really want to see from Devin Booker's standpoint heading into the season, he needs to take over. Like I understand like Steve Kerr asked him to do different things, but like we need to sit there and tell Devin Booker, this is your team.
Right.
Do your job, take the reins, and make sure like we keep the ship afloat, because that was the biggest thing I think that impacted us last year negatively, was not having a definitive leader on that team. Like Bradley Beal didn't seem to want to take that role. Durant didn't seem to want to take that role. Booker didn't want to take that role. And then like everyone was like, there was a lot of disconnect between who was the leader on the floor. They would say like everyone is, Booker, Durant, Beal, Frank Vogel, like.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of disconnect there. I just want to see Devin Booker say, "This is my team. This is what we're gonna do. Let's get it done."
I can see it. I can definitely see it, and I agree. I agree strongly about that. We're seeing an evolution. I feel like that's the key. That's kind of the theme of this episode is evolution, evolving. Like we discussed with the Diamondbacks, McCarthy evolving, Carroll getting back to himself, even Marte. This is a player that we all knew
Marte.
it could be, right? So them on that side, Booker in the Olympics, which as you discussed, you can't look at the stats on paper. You got to look at the intangibles. You got to see the highlights. You got to see the distribution. Whatever the team needed, Booker was there, and that's the sign of a true leader, doing what the team needs you to do.
At the end of the day, the box score never tells the full story.
Ever, 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 with any sport. But yeah, if Book takes over, if Book, I mean, not that he forgot it was his team per se, but if he, to your point, becomes that leader that he was meant to be, this team's going to take off. If he becomes that leader, runs the team the way we know he can, and he lets KD and Beal hoop and the role players do their thing, they're going to bring a championship to Phoenix for sure, for sure. And I'm going to cry like a baby. But let's put a bow on this thing. Any other key points you want to discuss? I know you touched on Marte a little bit. Anything else there?
Yeah, I mean, we saw it, in the postseason last year. Marte really taking that big step, and we saw it in years past as well when he was in MVP form. He was in that discussion a couple of years ago, and then like he just started getting hurt a lot. He was out of shape, and like now he's in shape, and all of a sudden he's just taking off and just showing like he's so valuable both offensively and defensively. Like he should absolutely be seriously considered for MVP. I mean, the only problem is that there's this guy named Shohei Ohtani that a lot of people look at and say, "Oh yeah, he's the MVP because he's Shohei Ohtani." Like
that guy.
But it's like the Dodgers are a plenty good team without him. They've proven that. He hasn't pitched. He does one thing, which is hit, and he's done it really well. But like Ketel Marte is doing everything really well. So
Marte's not that far behind him if you look at their numbers side by side, because that's what it's unfortunately going to boil down to is their statistics. MVP every year. I mean, average, I think Shohei is quite a bit ahead of him. Home runs and RBIs, though, I think they're relatively close, if I'm not mistaken. But like I said earlier, defense has to show something. It just has to be in the conversation. To your point, like you said, the Dodgers are a plenty good team without Shohei. They won a championship without Shohei. Granted, that was in a shorter season. Neither here nor there. But yeah, if you take Marte off of this Diamondbacks team, we're not the same juggernaut that we are. I'll just come out and say we have plenty of good hitters, but without Marte's leadership, without his defense, without his bat, we're not the same team. And I feel like that needs to be taken into account a little more than it is. But I guess we'll see.
It does need to be, but I mean, you could definitely give a more convincing argument for Shohei if he was pitching, but he's not.
For sure.
He's just hitting. That's all he's doing. So
that's it. Just hitting. If he was pitching, I think he would be the odds-on favorite. But yeah, let's hope Marte gets back soon. As we saw this morning, thankfully he is day-to-day with that low ankle sprain. So I'm hoping he'll probably should be there in Tampa Bay. I guess we'll see. Fingers crossed, though. But
yeah, it seems like they're going to potentially try to get him into like at least maybe a pinch hit role initially, and then maybe DH, and then play. Hopefully get into the field at some point here in the near future. So, really good news from him. I mean, as far as that low grade ankle sprain and only being day to day and not hitting the IL, that was a huge sigh of relief from us, especially what we've already experienced with Christian Walker and Moreno. So.
Yeah, I feel like every Diamondbacks fan, when we saw Ketel leave the game the other day, was just a collective just inhale and then that giant exhale this morning. But I'm hearing Walker might be back in the Dodger series. Fingers crossed. Moreno, of course, probably back right at the end of the season, which my thing, I was talking with somebody offline about it. As long as we've got these key pieces going into the postseason, as long as we keep the ship as it is, we'll be good. If we can be 100% healthy going in, I think this team's really going to take off in the post. But that's about all I've got. How about you? Anything else?
No, that's everything.
Yeah, like I said, we're definitely going to record a Cardinals episode soon. We've got a ton to talk about there. I'm working on writing again. I used to write articles a long time ago, but I'm going to be coming out with a piece about the Cardinals too, just kind of what to look forward to. This will be posted on YouTube and the socials hopefully by tonight, if not by tomorrow morning. But of course, thanks to everybody watching Cactus Talk. That's Noah. I have been Zach. Peace.
Later.